Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm going to robustly discuss Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse from the perspective of canon and how it impacts Dungeons and Dragons. Why, actually, specifically, why every single dungeon master, why Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is every single dungeon master content and has to be watched by every single dungeon master on the planet. Because of canon. All right, so let's jump into this. So first of all, let's talk about canon connections to Dungeons and Dragons. So this isn't my the next sentence is not my opinion. It's fact. Magic the Gathering is canon connected to Dungeons and Dragons, right? Strixhaven is canon in MTG. It's canon in Dungeons and Dragons. Ravnica is canon in D&D. It's canon in Dungeons and Dragons. Theros is canon in Magic the Gathering. Canon in Dungeons and Dragons. None of that is an opinion. That's a fact, right? Like, done and dusted, right? Like, all right. In my humble opinion, Yahtzee is canon connected to Dungeons and Dragons. Let me explain. Let me give him the reason why I believe that, right? Yahtzee has an official Dungeons and Dragons set, and that canon ampersand, right, on the side is both on the product and it's on the D&D books. And the Beholder, the Dragon, the gelatinous cube, every single monster printed on those canon D&D Yahtzee D6s, right, are canon written into the monster manual, right? Canon image, canon content, in the canon D&D hardbacks, right? And then yes, Funko Pop, in my humble opinion, is absolutely canon to Dungeons and Dragons. Funko Pop has Drow, and Funko Pop has Drow, and it specifically has Dritz Do'Urden, right? And Dritz Do'Urden you will find canon listed within canon D&D hardbacks, right? So canon. Right. Lego is officially connected to Dungeons and Dragons. And actually, it's a good question, right? Here's a question, right? I think we have to wait, right? So right now, Lego is officially connected to Dungeons and Dragons, right? So where does that come from? From the Lego Dragon's Keep Journey's End set, which is Lego approved and D&D approved, and is, in my humble opinion, the most important Lego set they will ever print, period, end of sentence, right? Because at that point, Lego will be connected to everything Dungeons & Dragons is connected to, right? And we'll be sending, and Dungeons & Dragons is connected to more things than any other intellectual property has ever been connected to, right? So, doing it in a perspective of narrative, and saying, the point of this product is for these intellectual properties to have narrative told within them and about them and from them, right? Period, end of sentence, right? So all of these intellectual properties are either canon connected or officially connected, right? So what's really interesting is Dungeons & Dragons deals with canon in a way that no other intellectual property in the world has ever dealt with canon, right? So it is an unprecedented intellectual property canon explorer. The product itself, the brand itself, the experience itself it's an unprecedented intellectual property canon exploration tool that is unprecedented in any way except Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. So Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse actually does something that Dungeons & Dragons does. It goes into new territory. It does something that was never, ever done before, right? And what is that? It discusses canon in the narrative, directly in the narrative, right? So the place where they did this is Miguel, Spider-Man 2099, says specifically, says that the death of Lieutenant Stacy, right, Gwen's father, is a canon event, right, and that it cannot be stopped because it is a canon event. And he tells Miles Morales that this is a canon event, and it has to happen, right? Captain Stacy, right? Actually, yeah, Lieutenant Stacy becomes a captain, and then he dies, right? And so basically, at this point, immediately, and I should say, so this is an extremely complicated film, right? So basically, Miles Morales gets in a situation where he knows his dad is going to die, right? And Gwen Stacy says this is a canon event that cannot be stopped, exactly like Lieutenant Stacy being killed, right? So this cannot be stopped. You cannot take action to stop this, because if you do, it's going to make it far worse, right? So you have this situation where, Gwen Stacy is telling Miles Morales, you cannot save your father, and also Miguel, Spider-Man 2099 is saying you cannot take any action to stop this from happening, right? And so at that point, this happens, and Miles Morales, begins to do what he can to move forward, and he's like, no, I don't care. I'm going to save my father, right? But this is truly, I've never seen this, right? We've seen this discussed, right, from the perspective of time travel, but that's not what they're doing here. They're saying these stories are told, these narratives are told across universes, in the multiverse, right? And get this is why every Dungeon Master has to pay attention to this, right? Like, Dungeons & Dragons, in my humble opinion, is not using the word multiverse by an accident. They want you to know it is connected to the Marvel multiverse and the DC multiverse, right? And frankly, the Fortnite multiverse, right? They want you to know any American product, any product sold, any American product, right, that has a multiverse, Dungeons & Dragons is connected, right? They want you to know that. They're using it on purpose, in my humble opinion, right? And so you reach that point, right? And what's truly astounding about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is they're saying, no, we're not even talking about time travel. We're saying that these stories, we're showing you the comic books, and we're saying that these have been in so many comics told by so many different authors that this is canon in this multiverse, right? And it cannot be changed. It has to remain in this way, right? And so they are playing literally with narrative as an element of the narrative, right? And this is exciting because we, as Dungeon Masters, are doing things with intellectual property, doing things with canon that no one else are doing. No other authors, no other story creators, no one is doing what we are doing, right? Telling stories spanning across intellectual properties, right? All that are using the term multiverse. No one is doing this, right? Like, not the way, and provisioning literally millions of Dungeon Masters to do this. Truly astounding, right? And so now we have to like go in and look at the cat's cradle of connections, right? So this is an invitation from Marvel. This is an invitation from Lego. This is an invitation from Dungeons & Dragons, in my humble opinion, right? To explore what happens when we begin to discuss Dungeons & Dragons canon within Dungeons & Dragons canon and Dungeons & Dragons narrative within Dungeons & Dragons canon and within Dungeons & Dragons narrative, right? And when does that discussion start? Right now. Right now. I'm starting the discussion, right? So how do we do this? How do we proceed forward and begin to discuss D&D narrative in our D&D narratives and discuss D&D canon in our Dungeons & Dragons canon, right? Marvel has opened this up, and Marvel made sure that this was connected to Lego, making sure it was connected to Dungeons & Dragons, right? And I will tell you right now, I don't believe for one second that the people in Marvel dealing with the multiverse have not looked very carefully at what's being done on D&D with its multiverse and its exploration of brand. And this idea of dealing with narrative within the narrative and dealing with canon within the canon, right? This is fresh and this is new and this is all linked, in my humble opinion. The conversation starts now. Every single word of that is, except for those few sentences that I called out at the beginning, or my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking, subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.